This video is brought to you by our trusted graphics partner, NVIDIA. Welcome to my unboxing and first look at the Blackhawk Ultra from Rosewill, the case that is actually almost the size of a grown man. At least a smallish grown man like the one you see before you. So we're gonna go ahead and slice this bad boy open. Rosewill includes almost no information about the Blackhawk itself on the outside of the box. So you can see that it's just a plain black box. This is their flagship case and fits pretty much anything according to their, according to everything that I already know about this case, which is wow, it's heavy. Okay. So Rosewill claims the gross weight is around 18.6 kilograms, with the net weight being 16.6 kilograms. So folks, that at a conversion of about 2.2 kilograms per pound is about 35 pounds empty. And you can see that I'm actually gonna run into, I almost ran into a clearance issue with the ceiling just from moving the box from the case. So, you initially see a big box for a case and you go, yeah, but the case inside couldn't actually be that big. For the Blackhawk Ultra, it just is. It just actually is. They're using an extremely high quality foam, which I love to see. Check this out. More than an inch of soft, durable, closed cell foam around every side, which is great. Their feet sit in little things here, so they're not going anywhere. This is expensive foam, guys. I cannot overstate that. It costs Rosewill money to put foam like that around their case and protect it in the event of shipping. However, I understand why they're doing it, because with a heavy, large chassis like this, especially once you start to load components inside it, here's the other one, especially once you start to load components inside it, the risk of something being damaged in shipping increases a lot compared to smaller cases. All right, so here we go. The Blackhawk Ultra, which includes all of the cooling options. So we'll start with, you know what, I'm gonna remove all this plastic and then we'll be back in a moment. Okay, well that actually didn't take as long as I thought. It was one solid piece of plastic, which as someone who opens up a lot of products, I actually appreciate, because it's frustrating when there's like a billion different tiny little strips of plastic that you can like peel off with your nail and you just try not to actually scratch the finish on the product itself. So the front of the case, pretty bare. I like that. I like a clean look. They've also gone with a mesh that has kind of a finer mesh behind it. So you're not going to be too worried about a ton of dust getting pulled into the case by the front air intakes. They've got 4 5¼ inch bays, one of which has a 3½ inch. Oop. We'll be back in a moment. Oh, there it is. Never mind. We'll say. One of which has a 3½ inch adapter in it, so you could put in like a card reader or something else like that. So this is actually intended to be mounted from the back, so we're just gonna go easy on it this time so that you can get a better pressure mount anyway. So that's for a 3½ inch device in the front. The sides of the front here are sort of a glossy plastic that I wish was matte. Looking at the case, you know, if it was for my own personal use. However, it's at least not a super fingerprint attracting black. So you can see, even though I'm touching it here, many cases will be a greasy, disgusting mess immediately, and especially things like routers. Have you ever actually like tried to wipe a fingerprint off a router? You go, you take your shirt, you wipe it off, and you're like, oh, now it's covered in micro scratches. Fantastic. This doesn't do that. So at least it's a good glossy plastic for what that's worth. On this side, we find a 120 or 140 millimeter fan mount on the back of a motherboard tray. This is great for motherboards that do have like heat sinks and cooling components or even power phases on the back of the board itself. So that's really cool to see included. And on the top of the case, which I have no idea how I'm going to show to you guys. Here we go. Maybe we'll just lean her forward. There's our I/O. So a whopping 4 USB 2, 2 USB 3, headphone, microphone, reset, power. This is kind of cool because so many times you see motherboards with like a ton of USB 2 headers and you're like, okay, that's fine. What are you gonna plug those into exactly? Well, you're gonna plug them into this case. So there you have it. As well as, check that out. That dock right there could be used for either 3.5-inch or a 2.5-inch drive, and it's a little hot swappable dock, so you just chuck your drive in there and you can use it for sort of mass storage without actually having a portable enclosure. So it allows you to use the native SATA interface for maximum possible transfer speeds. On this side, you find that this case is all about le cooling. So there's a 230 millimeter fan there, but check this out. You can put up to 9 120 millimeter fans on the outside of this side panel, which is sort of ridiculous wall of fans. I guess you have to have somewhere to put those weird 9 by 120 millimeter radius. You know, I don't know if you could mount. I bet you could probably ghetto mount it. That'd be kind of cool. I don't know if you'd get a fan on every slot just because of internal clearance, but whatever. It'd still be cool. Look how big this thing is. Like, it makes me look like some kind of like homunculus. All right. Power supply mount in the top. Water cooling grommets all over the entire back. I've actually never seen one actually implement an external water cooling system though, so I think these have a dubious value. 120 millimeter or 140 millimeter fan in the back. It comes with a 140. 10 PCI Express slots, so you can fit any kind of XL ATX form factor, even the longest 9-slot ones with a dual slot card in the bottom. You've got another power supply mount. This one has a foam piece right here, which we'll check out once we open it up, whereas the top one looks like, oh yeah, it does too. So that'll help dampen noise a little bit there. On the top of the case, you find more grills, more mesh. It's all about cooling up here as well. So we're going to open it up and find out exactly what kinds of fans are in there, but it's a more open mesh and then a much finer mesh. So if you did decide to use this as an intake, which isn't necessarily the way I'd recommend using them, then you could not worry about bringing too much dust into the case that way. That looks like an 80 mil fan mount there, just because on that other power supply plate, but yeah. Let's go ahead and check out the bottom of the case. Oh, my legs. On the bottom, we find, I believe there's a fan filter on the bottom somewhere, but at any rate, there's more mesh, and this really feels like it can be removed. Yeah, I think it can. So yeah, there we go. Maybe you're supposed to remove it. I don't even know. Let's remove it anyway. Voyage of discovery time. That's my favorite thing about this channel. Voyages of discovery, where we're just not really sure if we're supposed to do things, but we do it anyway. Yeah, there you go. That's a filter. It's probably supposed to remove. I have no idea how I'm going to get that back in, but whatever. Rubber feet on the bottom. Keep it from going anywhere when you don't want it to. Mind you, with how much this thing weighs, I don't think it's going anywhere if you don't want it to. And let's go ahead and open her up. So the side panel mounts with the classic little latches, and you've got rubber grommets here that are going to prevent unnecessary vibration on the mesh side panel from the fans that are mounted here. It should be noted that the side panel does have a fair bit of flex. You can see that. It's hard to avoid that when you have such a large mesh window, so that doesn't give as much support as solid metal, and when the panel's so large in general. But I mean, one strategy that you can use if you do have any vibration of the side panel that I've used in the past is a little bit of blue tack up here, down here, down here, down here, and that'll keep it from vibrating against the case. So if you do run into trouble, then you can do that. I'm not saying that you will, but two 140 millimeter fans here on the other side of the hard drive cages. That looks like two 140 millimeter fans at the front of the hard drive cages. This is a cool configuration because you see a lot of cases that have fans right at the front and at the back of the hard drive mounts, and the reason for that is because these are extremely airflow restrictive. There's actually not a lot of space. I don't know if you can see that, but between the you have to reinforce these because they're going to be full of what is one of the heaviest components of your system. So if you actually filled this thing up with really 10? With 10 3.5-inch hard drives, you would have a serious situation if this wasn't strong enough and it flexed and your hard drives all fell out. So you can't leave huge gaps. So what they've done is they've used a push-pull configuration to actually manage to move some air through this, keeping your drives cool as well as providing more cool air to the rest of your system. These are using a very thick steel construction, so you can see there's almost no flex to them whatsoever. And then they're using a rubber grommeted mount as well, so that should reduce vibration as well as noise from your drives, assuming you're using mechanical drives. With SSDs, it obviously won't make any difference. Inside here, things are just kind of ridiculous. I love this. So this is appropriate. They include not one but two 8-pin CPU power extensions. So you could probably put them together, but I think what they really intend is if you're using a super high-end motherboard, like something like an EVGA SR2 or SRX or something like that, you can actually extend both of your 8-pin connectors to make sure that they both reach. So that's cool. Comes with wheels, which is again appropriate, especially with the kind of systems that some people will be putting in a case like this. Little locking wheels are very appropriate. It'll otherwise be quite difficult to move around. There are some, looks like about 5 black cable ties in there that you can use for cable managing your system. And it comes with one of the largest bags of screws I think I've ever seen any case come with, ever. And I think a big part of the reason is check out all these huge fan screws. See that? These are the biggest fan screws I think I've ever seen. Love it. So there's 100 bajillion of those to correspond to the 100 bajillion fans that you can mount in this chassis. All right, more features inside. So we've got a large CPU cutout. Honestly, not that large given the size of this motherboard tray. But think about it this way, guys. An ATX board is actually going to go from here down to here. That's how big an actual, you know what, I'm going to go get one. We'll be back in a second. So here's what a normal ATX motherboard, I brought an Intel board because these are going to be a sort of dinosaur soon. That's what a normal ATX board is going to look like in this case. So it'll support pretty much any motherboard out there. Look at that. You can get form factors all the way over to here. I believe it supports HPTX. But here's what, this is just for lulz. This is what ITX, which is the sort of the smallest mainstream board form factor, will look like in here. So the CPU cutout alone will actually be wider than an ITX board, so that's one PCI Express expansion slot. So XLATX, it usually refers to boards that are longer than normal, so they'll still be about this width, but can go down to about here. And then EATX will be about here, and there are maybe a touch longer than that, I think somewhere over here. And then you can go all the way over here if you want. So, cable management. This is kind of neat. Rather than having these bang around inside the case, they're secured with a little Velcro strap here. You've got USB 3 for the front, USB 2 for the front, more USB 2 for the front panel audio, Molex to power that, that SATA bay up there, as well as a SATA cable that you can plug into your motherboard, and finally your front panel connectors for power reset and all of that other good stuff. The case doesn't have a built-in fan controller, but what it does have that I think is kind of cool are a couple of little fan hub station things. So you can plug 5 fans into each of them, and this is just a convenient power redistribution sort of method. I wish it was a little bit more cleverly implemented though, because some kind of speed control built into the power distribution hub would be great. And the other thing is, particularly this one, looks like it's going to be an issue to plug a Molex connector in here without having clearance issues with this fan. So there will be a little bit of kajiggering that'll go on in order to actually finish a build in this case. Cable management holes, I wish as well were a little bit cleverer, because they've got quite a small hole here. So you can take some of your cables up through here. So it's going to be your 24-pin, your 8-pin, your couple of 6 pins for your graphics cards, and then that's pretty much going to be full by the time you also bring up, you know, there's your motherboard connectors and stuff like that. So I wouldn't have minded seeing this whole space down here open to bring cables up, because it's a one-to-one relationship at some point, right? So if you've got all of these holes, that means that it all had to come out again somewhere else, and there isn't really enough space for that. So there's same thing here. So if a normal motherboard is going to be about this width, you're going to have to run your SATA cables away from the board all the way out to here in order to hide them and bring them back around to the hard drive cages. There's your tool-free mounting mechanism for your 5 1/4 inch bays. You don't have to use it though. There's mounting holes behind it. And 2 230mm fans adorn the top of the case, neither of which are plugged into these power distribution hubs. So again, there's going to be a little bit of configuration that goes on before you can finish with your system setup. Motherboard tray, I would have liked to see it a little bit more stiff, but by the time you actually load components on it, I think some people make too much make too much of the strength of a motherboard tray being a huge deal, because especially once you throw a board on it, it actually does stiffen up a fair bit. So we're going to go ahead and pull the other side panel off here. All right, see how much room we got for cable management, because if the intention is to mount a massive system with all the fixins, then they better have enough room for massive cables with all the fixins. So you got probably about an inch of space back here. It cuts off a little bit near the bottom, but that's fine. You shouldn't be running any cables there anyway. And there should be plenty of space to run things like, here's an example SATA cable. You could run like an actual bundle of SATA cables, probably about 4 thick, by the time you run out of space between this and the edge of the side panel here. Lots of, here we go, maybe not as many as I'd, actually, okay, yeah, no, there's a fair number of them. So lots of mounting points. So these little anchors, these loops right here, where you can route cables more permanently. There's enough of them, I'd say, to bring everything over here, keep it nice and tidy, bring your 24 pin up. See, you can see they thought of that, as well as to secure your 8 pin in the correct place. So this will run across the back of the board here. That 140 millimeter fan was going to go right on the back of the motherboard tray there. And other than that, the other side of the case is fairly nondescript. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you for checking out this unboxing and first look at the Blackhawk Ultra from Rosewill. Don't forget to subscribe to Linus Tech Tips for more unboxings, reviews, and other computer videos. And I mean, here's a fun challenge for you guys. How many ITX systems could you actually fit in here? 1, 2, 3. There's a little, actually, hold on, there's one more thing. There's a little note here. If your power supply is equipped with a single fan, you have 2 ways to install it. Oh, really? You mean just like every other case? Okay. Don't forget to subscribe to Linus Tech Tips. Again, subscribe twice.